Welcome to this explainer. We're diving straight into the chaotic, mostly hidden, and surprisingly highly scientific world of water damage and structural restoration. We often think of a flood as just a messy inconvenience. You grab some towels, maybe a mop, clean it up, and you're good, right? Well, wrong. Actually, at a microscopic and structural level, water intrusion is basically a ticking time bomb. So today, we're breaking down the exact, rigorous science that pro restoration teams use to save buildings from the inside out. Let's start the clock. Because when a pipe bursts at, say, 2 in the morning, professional dispatchers have exactly 60 minutes to get a crew on site before that water fundamentally compromises your property's structure. Every single minute is absolutely crucial here. Picture this, water immediately wicking up into porous drywall like a giant sponge. It's relentlessly spreading under your hardwood flooring, seeping down into the subfloor and saturating the hidden structural framing of the house. Basically, if you wait until the sun comes up to call for help, you're already losing the battle. And that urgency, it's tied to a very strict deadline, 48 hours. You have just 48 hours before hazardous mold spores start actively colonizing inside those damp walls and under those floors. Once water hits drywall inside a temperature-controlled home, well, the whole environment turns into a perfect incubator. If you hit that 48-hour mark, a relatively straightforward structural drying job completely escalates. Suddenly, you're not just dealing with water anymore, you're looking at a complex, hazardous mold remediation project. We're talking specialized hazmat suits, negative pressure containment zones, and some pretty severe health risks. It is literally a race against biology. So what actually happens when your home suddenly fills up with water? Like, how do professionals systematically dismantle a disaster of this scale? Spoiler alert, it isn't magic. It requires a really potent blend of physics, specialized equipment, and extreme precision. First up, the anatomy of a flood. To really understand the solution, we've got to understand the exact nature of the threat. And to do that, let's look at a microcosm of suburban America, specifically Sharonville, Ohio. It's fascinating because local geography can completely dictate a disaster. Take Sharonville's Mill Creek watershed as a prime example of a perfect storm. See, the area features extremely heavy clay soil, so instead of a massive downpour just draining away from a home naturally, that dense clay acts like a bowl, trapping all that pooling water right up against the concrete foundation. Now, combine that geological reality with brutal winter freeze-thaw cycles that continually expand and eventually completely shatter, aging 1960s galvanized plumbing near places like Sharonville Elementary. When you stack heavy clay, freezing temperatures, and 50-year-old pipes, you've got a perfectly predictable storm for structural flooding. And water? Water will relentlessly find the weakest point in any building's armor, no matter the scale. It might be a cracked galvanized supply line flooding a Hazelwood living room, or it could be a basement completely submerged because a sump pump decided to fail during heavy spring thunderstorms. On a much larger scale, it could even be a collapsed flat roof on a massive Interstate 75 commercial warehouse, trapping thousands of gallons of really heavy pooling rainfall. The scale varies dramatically, for sure, but the need for a rapid, completely scientific response, that is universally critical. All right, moving on to the 3 restoration phases. Let's dive into the structured, highly methodical process professionals use to actually halt this damage, because proper mitigation requires absolute adherence to protocol. The really crucial point to grasp here is that this isn't just mopping up a mess. It's a strict 3-phase sequence. Step 1. Emergency water removal. This means aggressive extraction using massive truck-mounted vacuum pumps, capable of moving hundreds of gallons a minute just to get the standing water out fast. Then, step 2 shifts into structural drying and monitoring. This is where they deploy industrial desiccant dehumidifiers and high-velocity air movers to forcefully pull the remaining moisture right out of the materials. Finally, step 3 is restoration and rebuilding. We're talking applying EPA-registered antimicrobials to prevent mold and ripping out completely unsalvageable materials like soaked insulation or warped baseboards to get the building back to its exact pre-loss condition. Skip literally any one of these steps, and you're essentially guaranteeing future structural decay. Now, classifying water damage. Before a single pump is even turned on, technicians have to identify exactly what kind of water they're dealing with, because you absolutely cannot treat all water the same. The Institute of Inspection, Cleaning, and Restoration Certification, or the IICRC, has strict standards, the S500, that classify water into 3 categories. Category 1 is clean water. Think of a broken fresh supply line, or maybe pure rainwater falling through a roof. It's wet, sure, but it's fundamentally clean. Category 2 is gray water. This is your appliance leaks or a toilet overflow with urine but no feces. It's got some contaminants. But Category 3, oh man, that is black water. This comes from sewage backups or river flooding washing right into your home. It's absolutely loaded with dangerous bacteria, pathogens, and heavy metals. Treating Category 3 black water like a Category 1 clean water leak is a recipe for massive, lingering health hazards. The required safety gear, the disposal methods, the drying protocols, the whole shebang has to completely adapt based on the specific hazard level of the water. And the secret weapon of this entire restoration industry, it's deeply rooted in a science called psychrometry. Basically, this is the exact science of drying. It involves measuring moisture content, carefully controlling air movement, and utilizing dehumidification to safely remove water from building materials. These professionals don't just set up fans and hope for the best. They're actually doing complex math. They calculate the precise evaporation rate needed, manipulating both the temperature and the humidity to forcefully extract water from deep within the wood studs and drywall, all without causing those materials to warp, shrink, or crack from drying out too quickly. Okay, on to the drying timeline. Let's see how all this builds into what is, honestly, the most agonizing but totally vital part of the entire process. Because while extraction is really fast, evaporation is deliberately controlled. The pace definitely slows down significantly right here. Rushing this process leads straight to internal structural rot, so technicians are out there monitoring the moisture levels daily, using specialized pin and pinless meters, until normal, dry standards are finally reached. Now, we already talked about that super fast 24 to 48 hour critical window to stop mold growth. But safely and completely drying standard residential drywall, that actually takes 3 to 5 days of constant airflow. And what about those saturated hardwood floors? Those require a grueling 7 to 10 days of sustained, constantly monitored drying. Just think about the poor homeowner having to listen to industrial fans roaring continuously for a week and a half, just to save their living room floor. But hey, you simply cannot rush the physics of evaporation.
And this brings up a really crucial point about the equipment itself. Trying to DIY a flooded basement with a few household box fans is literally like bringing a squirt gun to a house fire. Household fans just move surface air around. I mean, they might cool you down, but they're leaving the internal wall cavities completely soaked. And that hidden moisture inside the walls, it will inevitably feed a massive mold colony. Industrial equipment, on the other hand, utilizes commercial-grade dehumidifiers, massive air scrubbers equipped with HEPA filters, and high-velocity air movers. They even use thermal imaging cameras to actually see the invisible, cold pockets of water trapped behind your drywall, which allows them to effectively dry structures up to 10 times faster than standard vans. It's a total game changer.
Up next, navigating costs and insurance. Let's address the logistical nightmare that homeowners face the morning after a flood. Once the water actually stops flowing, that's when the paperwork and the practicalities begin. The absolute first question everyone asks is, can I stay in my home during the restoration? Well, the answer hinges entirely on the water classification and the equipment. If you have Category 3 sewage contamination, or if the crew needs to shut the main power off for safety reasons, temporary relocation isn't just a friendly recommendation, it is a strict necessity for your health. But even with clean water, you really have to consider the noise. Having industrial air movers and commercial dehumidifiers running 24/7 sounds pretty much like having a jet engine idling in your living room. From a purely sanity-preserving standpoint, staying is often just unbearable. And then there's the insurance reality check, which requires meticulous photo documentation and daily moisture readings. Why? Well, because standard homeowner policies usually cover sudden, accidental disasters. Sudden burst pipes, covered. Accidental appliance overflows, covered. Storm damage tearing off your roof, yep, covered. But insurance companies will actively deny claims for slow, gradual damage from neglected maintenance. If you ignored a slow leak under your kitchen sink for a year, you are completely out of luck. Also, outside floodwater, like a river cresting its banks, requires a completely separate flood insurance policy. Seriously, I urge you to check your own policies right now, especially regarding the difference between a slow leak and a sudden burst. Proper documentation is really your only real defense. Ultimately, this entire highly regulated industry exists to protect your most valuable asset from degrading from the inside out. Proper restoration prevents hidden damage, stops toxic mold growth, and eliminates recurring structural issues. You see, restoration isn't just about making things look or feel dry on the surface, it's about systematically ensuring that moisture is eradicated at a molecular level. If you skip these scientific steps, sure, your house might look perfectly fine today, but the framing inside your walls will slowly rot and fail months down the line. It leaves us with a pretty stark realization. Water damage is rarely a question of if, but when. Between our aging national infrastructure, failing water heaters, and relentless extreme weather cycles, your property is constantly being tested. So, looking at the exact science and timelines we've uncovered in this explainer today, the next time a severe storm rolls in, will your property's hidden vulnerabilities actually hold up? Or are you already on the clock?